How is it possible that a musician can be everywhere, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and still feel completely invisible? There is a real answer to that, and it's going to reframe the whole AI kills music conversation, because AI didn't create this problem, just walked through a door that was already open. Here's what I mean. A musician today can write a song, record it at home, mix it, master it, upload it to distribution, and get it onto every platform on earth, and still feel like they threw it into a black hole. The song exists, the song's technically everywhere, and somehow the people who would actually care may never hear it. We solved distribution, then we built something that made distribution almost besides the point. The algorithm. And I don't mean that in a cartoon villain way. I'm not picturing Spotify headquarters as a dark castle where an algorithm sits on a throne made up of unpaid royalties stroking a hairless cat, although in practice that does sound about right. What I mean is simpler. Once music becomes infinite, something has to decide what gets heard, and that something now sits between every artist and every listener, whether they know it or not. In theory, artists have more direct access to listeners than ever before. No label required, no radio programmer to impress, no retail buyer deciding when your album gets shelf space. You can release music globally, build your own audience, and post clips, send emails, announce releases, tell people exactly where to listen. That all sounds empowering, and sometimes it genuinely is. But in practice, there's always another layer between you and the listener. The platform decides whether your post appears. The streaming app decides whether your song gets recommended. The playlist decides whether you fit the vibe. The feed decides whether your announcement gets buried under a guy reacting to a podcast clip about how nobody wants to work anymore. You're not speaking directly to your audience. You're speaking through systems that rank, filter, suppress, recommend, reorder, and optimize. This is why I think the algorithm is the new record label. Not because it signs you, not because it develops you, not because it gives you an advance or booked studio time or tells you your second single needs more cowbell. The algorithm is the new record label because it controls access to attention. The old music industry had gatekeepers, labels, radio programmers, MTV, retail buyers, magazine editors. Some of that was corrupt, some was arbitrary. A lot of it depended on who you knew, where you lived, and whether some executive thought your band could sell enough units to justify the catering budget. I'm not here to romanticize the old system. The old gatekeepers were not noble guardians of art, but they were visible. You knew where the walls were. Radio mattered, press mattered, labels mattered, touring mattered. The rules were unfair, but at least you could see them. Now the wall's softer. It moves and changes shape. It smiles at you and says, "Your content's important to us," and then shows your release announcement to 4% of the people who ask to follow you. That's the new frustration. The gatekeeper is not always a person saying no. Sometimes the gatekeeper is a system saying nothing. No rejection, no explanation, no clear failure, just quiet lack of reach. And for musicians, that produces a very specific kind of maddening confusion. Was the song bad? Was the post bad? Was the timing wrong? Was the thumbnail wrong? Was the hook wrong? Did your followers not care? Or did they just not see it? Were you supposed to make 7 vertical videos first? Should you have used a trending sound to promote your original sound? That's one of those sentences that makes me want to walk into the ocean. But the algorithm's only part of the story. The other part is what streaming did to how people actually listen. Playlists. I use playlists. You use playlists. Everyone does. They help us work, drive, clean, sleep, exercise, relax. There's nothing wrong with that. But playlists change the unit of attention. A playlist doesn't say, "Here's an artist, enter their world." A playlist says, "Here's a function, focus, sleep, chill, workout, dinner, sad, happy, rainy day, coffee shop." Lo-fi study beats for people who've never actually studied but who enjoy the aesthetic of studying. The song becomes part of a texture, and when that happens, the artist can disappear. The context disappears. The album disappears, and tension disappears, and music becomes mood management. Think about the difference. If I say, "Play Fleetwood Mac," I'm asking for an artist. If I say play Rumors, I'm asking for an album. But if I say play something relaxing, I'm asking the system to define the experience for me. And the system doesn't need to care who made it, it just needs to satisfy that use case. Music has always had functional uses: dancing, rituals, work, grief, background, seduction, pretending you're okay. That's not new. What's new is the scale and the mediation. Those functions are now packaged, labeled, optimized, and served by platforms. And once the listener's primary relationship is with the mood rather than the artist, the platform becomes more important than the musician. That's a massive shift. And this is exactly where AI music starts to make a terrifying amount of sense. Not because AI invented fake music, not because humans were all making masterpieces until some machine showed up with a laptop and bad intentions. People have been making lazy, derivative, disposable music forever. Let's not give artificial intelligence credit for mediocrity. We're fully capable of that organically. The problem is AI fits perfectly into a system where music's already being treated as an endless function. The listener wants a specific artist. AI is a poor substitute. If someone wants Prince, you can't hand them a legally safe synthetic funk approximation called purple adjacent emotional weather and expect that to satisfy the same need. But if a listener wants 2 hours of unobtrusive background music for studying, sleeping, coding, or pretending to be productive while opening the same document 16 times, the difference becomes much less obvious. Not because the music is equally meaningful, because the use case is different. Background music is not always evaluated like art. Sometimes it's evaluated like lighting. Does it create the right atmosphere? Does it stay out of the way? Does it continue for 2 hours without requiring attention? That's a perfect opening for AI, because AI-generated music doesn't need to be great to be useful. It just needs to be adequate at scale. And adequate at scale is one of the most powerful forces in modern culture. The internet doesn't always reward the best thing. It rewards the thing that's good enough, available now, and cheap to produce, and shaped to fit the system. Music's not immune to that. So when people say AI will kill music, the more precise concern is that AI will flood the parts of the ecosystem where listeners were never strongly attached to the artist in the first place. Background music, mood music, stock music, generic playlist filler, functional audio. That doesn't mean all music dies. It means certain kinds of musical labor become easier to replace, because the listener was never really asking for a human being in the first place. That's harsh, but I think it's important. And here's what makes it harder to see clearly. The dashboard lies. Not intentionally, but metrics flatten meaning. A stream can happen because someone loved you, and because someone forgot what playlist they were on, and because your song came after another song and nobody bothered to skip it, and because the listener was asleep. A stream can happen because the algorithm needed something that sounded close enough to something else. Those are not the same kind of attention, but they look identical in the numbers. 1,000 streams sounds like a number. What are those streams? Were they fans? Were they strangers? Were they playlist drive-bys? Were they bots? Were they people who should come to a show, buy a shirt, care if you disappear for a year? The dashboard doesn't tell you any of that. And the platform's incentives are not the same as yours. The artist wants connection. The platform wants engagement. The artist wants people to care. The platform wants people to keep listening. Those goals can overlap, but they're not identical. And when they conflict, the platform wins, because the platform controls the room. So what do we actually do with this? Streaming isn't going away. Playlists aren't going away. Algorithms aren't going away. I'm not going to tell you to insist that every listener sit in front of 2 speakers with an album jacket like it's a religious obligation, although honestly, once in a while, it's not the worst idea. I don't think the answer is to declare that AI music isn't real music. That argument gets messy fast, and it may not even be the most useful fight. The better move is to be clear about what we actually value, to build build around it directly, because a platform isn't going to do that for us. The platform will optimize for the platform. That's not a conspiracy. That's what platforms do. For musicians, the uncomfortable answer might be that the most important work is no longer just releasing music. It's building relationships outside the stream. Email lists, live shows, communities, direct support, long-form content, behind the scenes, owning more of the connection, giving people a reason to care about the person behind the song, not just the song in a playlist. I know that sounds like more work, because it is. Sorry, I was hoping for a nicer answer too, but here's the hopeful part. The same system that makes music infinite also makes it possible for very specific people to find very specific artists. You don't need to reach everyone. A musician needs enough of the right people. The people who don't just want the relaxing acoustic background texture. The people who want your songs, your voice, your weird little emotional weather system, your way of seeing things. People who notice if you stopped. That's not mass attention, but it may be more durable. Because the future of music is probably going to split into two pretty distinct worlds. One world is this functional audio, endless, personalized, generated, ambient, optimized background. AI will get very good at this. Maybe it already is. The other world is human attachment. Artists, stories, communities, live performance, identity, taste, vulnerability, voice. Human musicians own this. Not because of nostalgia, but because a machine can't have something at stake. The danger is pretending these two worlds are the same, because they're not. And the dominant platforms don't always make that distinction clearly. AI may not kill music, but it might expose something uncomfortable. How much of the streaming ecosystem was already prepared to accept music without musicians? Not the music people love deeply, not the songs tied to memory, grief, desire, rebellion, heartbreak, driving at night, dancing, faith, rage, all those strange human rituals we attach to sound, but the background layer, the filler layer, the give me a vibe layer, the layer where the artist was already fading from view. That's where AI walks in, not as a burglar, but as a tenant, I guess. The machine didn't break into the house. The door was already open. Streaming opened it. The algorithm held it open, and AI walked in, carrying 1,000 perfectly adequate songs that nobody asked for. So maybe the job isn't to save music in the abstract. Music doesn't need saving. People will keep making it with guitars, laptops, modular synths, cracked phone screens, terrible microphones, AI tools. The better job is to protect the human relationship around music. The artist and the listener, the song and the story, the voice and the person behind it. Because if that relationship survives, music survives in a way that actually matters. And meaning is a lot harder to stream. If you like this, please subscribe. And don't forget to check out the next video. See you next time. What do you think?